Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to another episode of Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. Now, tonight we'll be going a little bit back into history and examining a very important concept known as waqf, or charitable trust in the modern day. And joining me tonight is Brother Zainul Kaji, who is an authority in this field and has been involved in it from 1987. Zainul, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Jazakallah, it's a pleasure.
Now, in terms of waqf, what are we talking? What is a waqf?
Okay. I think just to define it,
Yes.
a waqf is a charitable gift
Right.
out of one's own generosity, a voluntary gift that one gives and dedicates to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from one's possessions for a particular purpose, which is Sharia compliant for the pleasure of Allah. So one would actually say, I'm giving, let's say, X amount of money or a property, or in today's times even shares or some asset of mine, and I'm dedicating this for the sake of Allah, and I want the proceeds to be used for education or for healthcare or for any other purpose that I'm passionate about. So the important thing is that the capital or the asset has to remain intact. That's the corpus of the waqf.
Right.
What can be used is the usufruct, the fruits of the asset. So if one has a typical example of a house that I have and I donate this house, or a group of us have this house and we donate this house, the house has to remain intact, but we can rent it out.
Right.
But we can only use the rental income. So over time, what happens is that as many people are donating this waqf or their properties or their wealth, you're having this asset base that now belongs, it now belongs to in the public domain, and the income that is generated out of it is actually used for various charitable purposes. Actually, not one may call it charitable purposes, but it could also be what we would call maybe municipal services.
Right.
So which are given on a voluntary basis. Like I think you early on we were discussing where people were making waqfs also for cleaning streets.
Yeah.
So so the waqf actually forms a very important part of our Islamic economy.
Right.
Because now what we're doing is we're taking out wealth from the private domain and putting it there into the public domain.
Right.
So what really effectively becomes public property. So even if we're making a family waqf or a charitable waqf, the asset ultimately would actually become public property. So when we talk about the waqf, we're talking about assets.
Right.
We're not talking about consumable stuff. We're talking about real assets that and those assets could be infrastructure assets. It could be your financial assets. It could be commercial assets. It could be religious assets like your mosques and madrasas and so forth. It could be other social assets like clinics, hospitals, orphanages, and so forth. So if one looks at it, we're looking at ordinary people contributing and making these contributions that now are regarded as part of the waqf or for sadaqah jariyah purposes. In fact, there's a very common hadith that is quoted. Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is reported to have said that all our deeds come to an end except for three. The one is where we are donating beneficial knowledge, or we leave behind beneficial knowledge. We leave behind some good deeds, but we also leave behind pious children. that pray for us after we have gone. But the sadaqah jariyah is one of the things that we leave behind, that we gain the thawab forever. So all good deeds come to an end except for these three. So that has also become a kind of inspiration for a lot of people to actually give away some of their wealth during their lifetime. Of course, you can do that through your will as well, but we can discuss that as well.
So there is a historical basis for this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Where just unpack, just let us understand where this is originate, how did it come about, some examples of...
Okay. I think one of the most common examples is the example of Hazrat Umar.
Right.
During the time when they were in Medina, and of course during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu acquired a beautiful farm, orchard in Khaybar, and he approached the Prophet ﷺ and asked him, what do you advise me to do with this? And the Prophet advised him to make this into a waqf. He said to him, keep the land, but use the orchard and sell the date palms, the dates, the fruits, and use that to support the orphans, the needy, your family, and for the general use of the public as well, and for the mujahideen. So that really became almost the first commercial waqf, because in a sense that that was an agricultural economy, and that was a thriving farm. Mm-hmm. It was one of the best properties that he acquired, and it was an income generating farm, so a commercial farm.
Yeah.
So in that sense, although one could say that the first waqf, as people say, was the Masjid Quba,
right,
where a mosque was actually built on that particular land. It was actually the Prophet ﷺ's in-laws that actually gave him that land to build the mosque, the Banu Najjar family. So, but this commercial waqf now comes into being. Then you have the example also of other Sahaba, like Abu Talha, Allah be pleased with him too. Also, one of the verses that was revealed was لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. This verse, and a lot of the scholars actually refer to this verse as one of the most significant verses that spurred on this whole waqf making culture actually.
Right.
So a lot of the Sahaba then began making waqfs, because they went to the Prophet ﷺ and took his advice and wanted explanation of this verse. And people came to him and said, look, this is my best property. Abu Talha said, I've got a property in Medina called Birruha, and I'd like to give this. What should I do? And the Prophet advised him to give that waqf to his family.
Right.
So it wasn't a public waqf.
Yes.
It was a family waqf.
Right.
So leave it behind for your family and relatives, poor relatives that you may have. So one could see that there was a kind of a vision behind this whole thing, that it was something long term, because it couldn't have been consumed there and then. Then there's another very interesting example, and this involves the Prophet ﷺ himself. Mukhayrik, Rabbi Mukhayrik, the Jewish rabbi who fought along the Prophet ﷺ in the Battle of Uhud. Upon his death, in his will, he dedicated 6 orchards to the Prophet ﷺ. And these orchards were then also made waqf. So the Prophet,
by the Prophet ﷺ.
By himself. Wow. So some of it he made for his family and others for public works and so forth. So here, directly in Medina, from the Prophet ﷺ, from his very close companions, almost every single Sahaba that had some wealth recorded in history made waqfs. And this has carried on for hundreds of years.
So, I mean, it looked quite commonplace, but until I read until 1926, it was quite common to have a waqf.
Yes.
Then there was the change in the Ottoman Empire and Egypt and surrounding areas. And I think there it became officially detached. So it was in decline.
Yes.
But I think the Ottomans have a rich history of waqfs as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think some of them persist up to today.
Yes. Turkey is even known as the haven of Awqaf
Yes.
today.
So in terms of an institution, for 1,300 years or so, it survived. But right now there's an uptake again.
Yes.
So in terms of what you were saying, does there have to be a formal document, or how do you create a waqf? Say, I want to create a waqf for cleaning the streets. You know, there's a lot of litter. I don't know if you heard that there was a Sowetan marathon last week.
Yes.
One of the complaints was that the streets were just terribly dirty. Now, traditionally, from what I understand, if you say there was a municipal function to this, the people of that area took it upon themselves to clean it. If not, then you would find a sponsor, a man who created a waqf, says, I'll employ A, B, and C to do this. And these are the terms of it.
Right.
So is there a formal document or is it a formal process? And what is that process?
Yes and no. I think very important is the intention of a person who wants to make a waqf. If it's something that is perhaps movable, like cash, maybe either one would place it in a box or one would actually hand it over to an institution or create a document around it as well, which is called a waqfiyya, which is what we would call maybe a trust deed.
So the English equivalent is charitable trust.
Yes.
Or embodied in a trust deed.
Charitable endowment trust.
Yes.
So the waqfiyya would actually detail the niyyah. It would detail the purpose of the waqf. It would detail the capital sum of the waqf. It would detail the terms and conditions of the waqf. So you would actually go through in very fine detail, and there are waqfs, for example, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent of the lawgiver
of Turkey.
We have a copy of his waqf actually, which is so thick. Of course, we can't read it because it's written in Ottoman Arabic script. But Alhamdulillah, you know, I think the Turks actually went into meticulous detail about how the waqf should actually operate. So, for example, the waqf of Sultan Mahmud, who was the conqueror of Constantinople, of present-day Istanbul, in his waqf, also waqf deed, he actually explains where he got his earnings from.
Right.
And he says that, you know, these are my legal earnings, and the waqf, this waqf is made, and I'm dedicating 6 of my shops, or whatever the number is, to this waqf, and I would like the proceeds of this waqf to be spent as follows. Then he details, I would like to employ 3 doctors to roam the streets of Istanbul, to go door to door, to each house, to look for sick people and to cure them. And if he can't cure them, then he must take them to a Bimaristan hospital, and to ensure that they get better there. And then he also goes further that I would like to establish a soup kitchen out of this. And he says that if there are poor people that come, provide them with relevant soup and so forth, the food. But if there are those that don't come, then you go out to them in the darkness of the night and you give it to them there, just so that their dignity is respected. So they go into that kind of meticulous detail in the waqfiyya. So it becomes a very personal kind of institution.
Yeah.
That what is my wish, and this is one of the beauties of the Waqf system.
Yeah.
That it allows the freedom of giving.
Yes.
And giving for a purpose that I want to, I love. I may love trees or plants or birds or whatever, and I can make a waqf for that. And so in that sense, I mean, there were waqfs where people made just for like the rest houses.
Yeah.
Every 5 kilometers, for example, there was a rest house.
Right.
Where people were entitled to stay for 3 nights.
Okay.
But anyway, we were talking about
the formal
document. Yeah.
Okay, but it's a time to take a break. Please stay tuned and join us after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. And tonight I'm joined by Brother Zainul Kaji, who is an expert in the field of waqfs or charitable endowment trusts. Now, just before the break, we were talking about the historical perspectives as well as the formal documentation. And Brother Zainul was giving us lots and lots of examples of how this has transformed even into the modern age. And we were talking about the document that sultans of the Turkish Osmani Caliphate left behind, giving very detailed instructions on what should be done. Now, some of these exist in the modern day as well, as we found in Turkey, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But did it have to be that sophisticated a document? Aren't there examples of ordinary people doing ordinary things in the course of their lives?
Yes, I think there are lots of those examples. People are donating, the most common examples are people donating towards a property for a mosque, or even donating land for a qabristan.
Yeah.
There's lots of these examples in, for example, the Bulgaria, Romania, all those Ottoman countries at that time. And in fact, there's a whole publication now on all the waqfs that were made in that area as well. In terms of documentation, I think one could go into that much of detail, but then you could get a very simple document as well, just detailing your intention, purpose, what the waqf is. It would also detail on who the trustee should be, or the mutawalli, or the mutawalliya. Male or female could be a mutawalli, trustee. Hazrat Umar's daughter was the trustee of his waqf,
right.
Hafsa. So, already at that time, women were already involved in it. And talking about women's involvement, there were lots of waqfs made by women. Almost 1/3 in Edirne was recorded as waqfs made by women. So the documentation need not be very elaborate. I mean, the sultans probably had their own scribes and advisors and all of that to help them do all these. But I think because it was part of the culture of the community, they took the waqf very seriously. And one of the things that Sultan Suleiman said, and he actually cursed people who didn't follow the waqfiyah to the T, because the waqfiyah actually becomes almost law. Not almost, actually it is law. It is like a will, because once you make a will, I think from your experience, the legal experience, that will has to be carried out to the T.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the waqfiyah.
Yes.
The waqfiyah has to be carried out to the T. So it puts an enormous responsibility on the mutawalli or the trustee to actually carry out and execute that waqf in terms of the waqfiyah.
Now, we've covered international waqfs,
Yeah.
right? Are there in South Africa, I know we were referring to this book, Management and Development of Awqaf Properties, which is a publication that you say you attended, and it goes back from the time you got involved in 1987.
1984, yeah.
That's 84. Okay,
Yeah.
the publication is 87. So the document there was very interesting. It spoke of South African waqfs.
Yeah.
And it drew a distinction between, or similarities between, the trust as we know it in South African law and waqf, right? So what are some of the similarities before we come to specific examples of waqfs created in South Africa?
Okay. I think that we need to just, since we're talking about trust and waqf,
Yes.
we need to also just point out that the notion of a trust, many scholars actually say that the trust actually is derived from waqf law, because if one looks at the trust law, it actually resembles the waqf law in many respects. For example, the similarities: the trust has a founder,
Right.
the waqf has a founder. The trust has a corpus, the waqf has a corpus, the essence of its asset. The trust has a trustee, the waqf has a trustee or a mutawalli. The trust has a beneficiary, the waqf has a beneficiary. Where the differences come in is in terms of its purpose. So, for example, the waqf purpose has to be Sharia compliant, has to be for the pleasure of Allah. Otherwise, it's not regarded as a waqf.
Right.
In a trust, it could be for any purpose. It could even, for all intents and purposes, it could be for the creation of a brewery. Okay, so, or it could be for any un-Islamic purpose. In the case of a waqf, the asset actually vests in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The owner is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this also comes from the concept that one of the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the ultimate inheritor. He is al-warith. So whatever we own, actually, we don't really own.
Yeah.
He owns. And what by making a waqf, we are actually acknowledging that, yes, Allah, you own this, I'm giving it back to you.
Right.
So in that way, that's also a big difference between a trust and a waqf, because in a trust, it's not necessarily vested in Allah, it's vested in the trustee.
Yes.
So those are some of the differences.
Well, one of the interesting points there was that a donor or a founder of a trust can himself be a beneficiary. I think one of the distinctions I read, barring a few exceptions, very, very narrow, the founder or the donor himself can't take benefit from it, barring a few exceptions. But to come back to South African examples, what for you historically is a outstanding example of trusts or waqfs?
Well, look, South Africa has got a rich tapestry of awqaf,
Right.
okay, of waqfs. Awqaf is the plural of waqf.
Yes.
So, for example, we've got the Haji Lockhart Waqf in Durban.
Right.
This waqf was created in the 1950s with £3,000.
1950s, yes.
With £3,000, which was a substantial amount of money at the time. But it was also encouraged by his wife Aisha, who gave some of her jewelry to him to establish this waqf. And alhamdulillah, I mean, this is now 50, 60 years down the line. The Lockhart Waqf owns several commercial properties in Durban. It has contributed towards building several schools in rural KwaZulu-Natal. It has built mosques. It runs a whole range of madrasas in and around Durban. It has contributed to many charitable projects in housing, in providing ambulances to Muslims and non-Muslims. So that is one example. There are many other trusts that families have established. And I think one significant trust is the Mias Farm one in South Africa, down here in Midrand. So that's also a waqf. So we do have those examples of families creating waqfs. And of course, now we have the example of Awqaf South Africa, which is a community-based and a collective waqf system, creating waqfs for people that may not have that type of wealth, but who may be able to make waqfs even with small amounts of money. And this is also something that has become very popular about a cash waqf.
Right.
So this is a kind of international trend that is now sort of a new wave in the whole waqf sector.
Right.
Where many financial institutions are also now beginning to ask their depositors to contribute towards a waqf fund. So you've got takaful funds and you've got waqf funds that are actually being created by banks and so forth in many countries. So in South Africa now, we also find that a recent trend is, because there's more consciousness about waqfs, many of the institutions are now beginning to mobilize waqf funds, and they're actually constructing infrastructure like flats and so forth for sustainability of their organizations, because I think they realize that at the end of the day, we need that sustainability. We can't keep going on to donors to ask them for money to run our operating costs. So this now begins to help fund our operating costs. But there's also a lot of other needs that we have in South Africa, and people are making waqfs. For example, the Hajj waqf has been established. The waqf fund for Imam development has been established. There's a waqf fund now being mooted for pension funds for Imams, subvention of their salaries, their medical aids, things like that. So now we're beginning to look at, in South Africa, a whole range of waqfs for different purposes that are there, in terms of community needs, whether it's sports and recreation, arts and culture, the Quran competitions that are being held. There's waqf funding that is going towards that, or proceeds from the waqf funds. Mm-hmm. The waqf fund is a sacred fund.
Right.
So the capital of this waqf fund may not be spent under any circumstances whatsoever.
Let me ask you just to take a breather there. We need to go for a short break. Please stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. And tonight I'm joined by Brother Zainul Kaji, who is the CEO of Awqaf South Africa. And we're discussing the concept of waqfs, or charitable trust, the similarities and differences between a trust and a waqf, the formal document, the historical perspective, how it's carried out around the world, some of South Africa's best examples. You, the viewer, are welcome to join us in this discussion, and the lines are open and you can call in. The lines and the numbers appear on your screen. Brother Zainul, so in terms of South Africa, we've had lots and lots of interesting waqfs, but just to come back to, I think, a very important point, the waqf didn't have to serve a massive project. It could be something as simple as looking after animals.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, if you had a passion for something, and it looked like it was there to serve a social process, a demand. It filled a gap that was missing, as opposed to leaving it to some, let's say, the state authority to do something. People took it upon themselves to build roads, right?
Mm-hmm. Roads, pavements, bridges.
The bridges of Mosa.
Water fountains in the city. I think the one point that we should actually mention is that, just following from your question, is that the waqf system was part of the fabric of society.
Right.
It was just like a natural thing,
right,
that people would, that aspect of generosity, that aspect of giving was endemic, was just about everywhere. So, one finds it difficult, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that maybe it's this capitalistic system and this the system that, you know, we after accumulation rather than disbursement, that drives us all the time, you know. And the culture there was different. The culture was there more of disbursement rather than accumulation.
Yeah, well, look, I heard a teacher once say to me, it was quite interesting, that capitalism destroyed charity and sadaqah. And that allowed, you know, it made people mean as opposed to giving. So just to take a simple example, if you found the street dirty in front of your shop, it was your responsibility to clean it up. I mean, if you go to certain parts of our city, it's shocking
Absolutely.
that there's a predominance of Muslim businesses, but there's absolutely no civic duty or responsibility to keep the place clean. We have a call on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, how are you?
Fine, and you?
Right, man. I want to ask, man, I've received a warrant of arrest,
Right.
for traffic fines.
Yes.
From a company somewhere. I think the traffic department has hired that company. It's based in Cape Town.
Right.
So I'm confused. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to react to this.
Okay. While we're not discussing that, I'll try and give you an answer quickly so that you can get some help. There should be a number on that document that you can call.
Yeah.
Now, if you were never in Cape Town, I don't know why the warrant of arrest would be issued for you to appear in Cape Town.
No. I don't know whether I should appear in Cape Town or what. It's just an SMS that says a warrant of arrest has been issued.
Okay, generally a warrant of arrest for traffic offences follows a number of other steps. So you have to have a letter sent to you, then within a certain amount of days you have to have a summons, and the summons has to be dispatched to you. But I think just in the short term, to answer you, there's a number there. There should be a number in which you can respond to. And if you don't get it, try and go and see your nearest local authority, traffic authority, and ask them what's this all about.
I haven't received any letter or anything.
Now, it could be that they've taken these steps against you without your knowledge. It could go to an address that you're no longer in. It could go to a PO box. It depends what address you put down when you did your license application for your vehicle. So it's best to have it sorted out before you get stopped and arrested at the roadblock. Then you have to go to court immediately. Then you have to give an explanation as to why you didn't appear in that court on that day. The warrant is only when you fail to appear in court. So it's best if you can go and make some inquiries, like I say, with the number that's there or at your nearest traffic department. Okay? Sorry, Zeno. So just to come back, I think the point we were discussing
Civic duty
was that you took it upon yourself to self-help, and you didn't wait for the authorities to come and do something about it. I think in many ways people have done this, but perhaps not with the same amount of, let's say, attention to detail. Neighbors would get together to hire a security guard. That would be kind of that kind of thing. But you could easily do a lot more with the right intention and say, I'm creating a waqf for this or that reason. During the break, we saw an waqf or an advert for wells. That's the typical thing that I think people actually do. They say, family members passed away, let's build a mosque or madrasa or dig a well and say the intention is sawab jariyah. Yes. But it's far more, like you were saying, it was far more common in daily life.
Like the one example is, there are lots of poor brides.
Right.
Okay. So now poor brides can't afford the kind of clothing that they need to wear for their weddings. So a waqf is made of a trousseau.
Yes.
And so this trousseau is made available for any poor bride who wishes to borrow it
on her special day. Yeah.
Then there's waqfs like, say, for example, a little apartment So for poor brides or poor couples to have a starter pack kind of little apartment because now marriage becomes a kind of is an institution that Muslims would encourage, but now we also need to create facilities for them.
Right.
So waqfs are now made for like starter packs, so they get married, stay there for a little while, get used to it, and then move on. So they may pay a nominal rental, or they may pay a market-related rental, or whatever. But these are the kind of things that people did. If I felt that, I'm living nearby a little stream that needs cleaning, I made a waqf to employ somebody to make sure that that waqf is that stream or that little dam is kept clean. I've seen a situation where this person have actually employed a person who is riding on the boat in that dam and just making sure that it's clean. So, it's that kind of thing. Now, I think today we need, like, food security is a major issue.
Yeah.
So planting of food
Yes.
gardens, like in South Africa.
But you could easily
education.
do it. You could do it at your front
Yourself.
lawn.
You could plant a tree on your pavement.
No, you could plant vegetable, like
Yes.
this new gardening.
Yes.
And say, I create this waqf, so any passerby
Yeah.
can collect the vegetable that he needs.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about more technologically based waqf. So I think, for example, coding is a national priority, right? In the State of the Nation address, Obama, in his State of the Nation, said coding has to be taught to American students. In South Africa, there doesn't seem to be any pronouncement on this. But could you create a waqf and say, I want to give this stipend, the corpus is, say, 10,000, and it is only for the purpose of teaching computers or coding to children?
Yeah, look, I may mention actually that very recently 3 or 6 PC labs were set up by OCAF South Africa, and coding was actually taught there at those labs.
Where
this was in Cape Town.
Cape Town.
Africa Coding Day.
Right.
So this was part of that. But you've got organizations like Siafunda that may not be a waqf, but that's what they do, providing computer labs all over. Right. And it's done out of a charity. So one could also talk about research and development, because that's another area Muslims are weak in. And the waqf need not actually go only for Muslims. It could go for public benefit.
Of course.
So if you do some research, for example, curing a particular illness, and you put in a waqf to do research on that, or any particular ailment or sickness, or and there's plenty, I think, research work in the medical and scientific arena. So waqfs can be made for that, and I think, like you say, for higher technology research, for example, inventions, you could make a waqf to encourage young people to invent things.
Yes.
I mean, that's the kind of creativity. So there's really, it's just a question of imagination, of what can you imagine, or what would you really like to do. Now, sometimes you may feel that you need a lot of money to do things. Now, that is why you have collective OCAF, like OCAF South Africa, and then there are, the corporate waqfs and so forth, that now become institutionalized, and that the institution now is able to do things and take things to scale, on a bigger scale, and fund things on a bigger scale, so that you are able to achieve multiple purposes rather than something small. But that doesn't preclude the small donor or the waqif to make those kind of waqfs.
Right.
On the ground where they are, whatever they can do according to their capacity. So This is the kind of flexibility
Right.
that the Waqf system actually allows us, and we don't take advantage of it. The essential thing is that there's got to be sustainability, and that is why a Waqf is set up for the sustainability of that particular project.
Right. But now, you have the distinct, let's say, honor of having won Awqaf SA, right? I read that there were some international awards bestowed on you, which means that, does it mean that your model has been accepted internationally?
I think Awqaf South Africa the model has been accepted, and because we were probably the first mover in this whole area of establishing a community-based Waqf system. From here, other countries have also accepted it, like Muslim minority countries, in particular New Zealand, Australia, the US, Canada, the UK. France is coming on board. Some other African countries are also, developing this. So
you mentioned Nigeria has
yes,
also just
Nigeria, right now as we speak, a conference on Waqf is taking place in Malaysia, in Johor, one of the southern states of Malaysia. Then in Nigeria, for the first time in a largely Muslim-dominated country or Muslim-populated country, a Waqf conference is taking place in Kano. So that shows also that, there's this whole revival, this whole move about bringing knowledge together and expanding on the knowledge base of the whole Awqaf sector in finance, in social finance, in looking at management, corporate governance, a whole range of issues surrounding this aspect of social finance, which is now also treated as part of the Islamic economy. So, for example, the governor of the Reserve Bank of Indonesia said that commercial finance and social finance is part of the Islamic economy. The social finance includes Awqaf and includes Zakah. So the people that are sitting on the side of commercial finance cannot ignore the social finance.
Let me ask you just to pause there. I'm told that we've got to go for another ad break. Please stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And a reminder that you tune to Legal Ease, the show that converts legal jargon into legal ease. And tonight the topic of discussion is Waqfs or charitable trust. And we're joined in the studio by Brother Zainul Kaji, who's had got extensive experience in this field for many, many years. He also is a director of Awqaf SA?
The CEO.
The CEO, right. Now, just before the break, we were talking about aspects of Awqaf. There was a financial aspect to this that seems to be borrowed by various international organizations. There was a conference coming up in Kuno. I think earlier on you mentioned to me there was something like 400,000 Waqfs just in Malaysia.
In Indonesia.
Indonesia. Now, how can we implement Waqfs for the benefit of local South Africans? There's so many challenges, right? There's challenges of water, education, feminine hygiene, medicine. There's so many challenges. I think the message that you have to get clear, it's not only for the benefit of the Muslims, it's a benefit for humanity, for the population at large.
Absolutely.
Give us some of the examples that you've seen working locally or you would like to see.
Well, I think one of the things that we would like to see is community-based Waqfs.
Right.
We'd like to see every village, every community, every family, every business creating a Waqf. Every individual as well.
Right.
And this, for example, happens in Singapore as well, where every single Muslim citizen, working citizen, contributes maybe $10 per month to the central fund. and this helps them to develop the Muslim Ummah in different ways, and of course contributing to the broader society as well. And
but you mentioned dawah as one of the activities that you can...
Yeah, so we as a minority community in South Africa, people don't like to talk about minorities because we don't necessarily, if we talk in the context of the African continent, then we're a majority. But the mental attitude that we have is that we are in a situation where we in a very diversified country. We have a deep division of wealth disparity in this country, and poverty levels are stark. The stark reality here. So when we start looking at Muslim contribution, then we would like to see the whole community being involved in this waqf making process. Individuals, families, villages, and so forth. Now, one of the initiatives that has started as well is in a township community in KwaNobuhle. So we've actually created a partnership between Awqaf South Africa and the KwaNobuhle Muslim community.
Okay.
So what they would do is the community would mobilize funds from themselves, and Awqaf would help them set it up. This is also happening in the Boerland in the Cape. So and we'd like to see more ulama actually becoming experts at Awqaf and spreading the knowledge about Waqf. Our schools, madrasas, universities, at some level, we have introduced some courses at higher level. Just today, I got a call from somebody who said that they prepared to actually introduce this at a school. So we need this knowledge to go, because we don't hear about Awqaf at our institutions, in our madrasas. This is essential knowledge. If it was part of our culture, then why don't we have the knowledge? So, inshallah, I think this is something that is in process, and more people need to take it up. It doesn't belong to us, it belongs to everybody. The whole institution belongs to the Ummah. So whoever can actually take it up and help in its proliferation, we would welcome it. The point about decentralization is very important to us, that while we have, for example, an institution like Awqaf South Africa, we'd also like to see multiple institutions actually developing. The more the merrier. So it's not the reserve or preserve of any single person or single organization to do, but it's for everyone.
Very interesting. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I only have a few seconds to thank the viewers tonight for being with us, and to you, Brother Zainul. Thank you very much for really educating us about something I think that's critical for the upliftment of people, and it's a vehicle that could be very, very effective.
Absolutely.
And you'd encourage people to, how would they, do you have a website if they need to?
Yes, absolutely. You can go onto the Awqaf South Africa website, www.awqafsa.org.za. We also have a website called Waqf Academy. There's lots of reading material there. If you click on the resources, there's lots of reading material.
Excellent.
We've got an online library that on that particular website, which hopefully becomes an international sort of resource for anybody who wishes to learn about Waqf, can go onto that website as well. So it is in the process of development. You can actually do a course on your own on that website as well, online. So these are just some of the developments, but reading material is there. This one here was probably the first English written literature that was available. And subsequently, I mean, there's lots of others. This is a translation of a 600-700-year-old book by Al-Khatib Al-Shirbini, translated now into English. Book on Kitab al-Waqf. So,
there's many resources out there.
Absolutely. This is also something new that the Islamic Development Bank has produced. So there's lots more resources now
Yes.
coming up, conferences and seminars, etc. There's a seminar workshop
Thank
taking
you.
place in Cape Town as well.
All right.
In December.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
now we're out of
Okay.
time. There you go, dear viewers. You have all the information. Please make use of it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.